Number 1.
This happened when I was maybe 14 or 15 years old. I'm 17 now and I'm a female. Just so you know, I was probably around 5'3" and 100 pounds at the time. So yeah, I was with 2 of my friends, one male, one female, at a large kids playground behind a supermarket. We were right at the top of one of those huge jungle gym rope things. The one I was on had little platform things, and we were chilling on one of them eating ice cream and just people watching. It was a fairly hot day, not like Indian summer, but enough so that people were in sundresses and shorts and the like. My friends are engaged in conversation, and I'm sort of scanning around, just watching and judging people. Right at the edge of the park, there is a bench, and on it I see some guy sitting there. I don't know exactly why, but I just got some dodgy feeling from him. He just didn't fit in. It was a hot day, and he was there, all in black, like cargo trousers and bomber jacket type thing. He had some sort of olive skin, like Mediterranean, Middle Eastern looking. I notice he's staring really intently at something, so I follow his gaze to a small child sitting alone on the floor of the park, just running her hands through the sand and just doing nothing. The park is busy, but she's alone. No one is close enough to be a friend or family, if that makes sense. She's maybe 1.5, possibly 2 years old. Ginger hair, pretty as a picture. I mean, this kid looks like a freaking stock photo. So, back to this guy. He was just staring and watching her really creepily, and I'm like trying to rationalize it in my head. I'm well aware that a child's skin color does not always match their parents, but I'm pretty sure that this isn't her dad. This girl is white as snow, almost albino-like, not even a hint of mixed race in her. Maybe he's a babysitter, family friend, adoptive parent, I don't know. But something about him just gave me the creeps. He's switching between staring at this kid and tapping away on his phone, and occasionally holding his phone up as if he's taking a photo of the girl. Suddenly, this girl burst into tears for an unknown reason. Where I'm from, it's very common if a small child is crying for a passing female, never a male, to pick up and comfort the kid. So I go climbing down this rope thing and start walking over to the little girl. As I do, the man gets up and sort of power walks over to her, swoops down and picks her up. A bit weird. I start talking to this guy, just to check everything as it should be. This is the conversation. "Ah, she's cute. Is she your daughter?"
No?
"Oh, right. You babysitting or something?"
No, her uncle. Yeah.
"Does it take that long to remember how you know this kid?" Alarm bells ringing now. I'm gonna test this motherfucker. Okay, what's her name?"
Lucy.
Then I turn to the kid and say, "Well, hey sweetie, my name's Poppy. What's yours?" Okay, I've never studied child talk, but I heard something along the lines of ever. Whatever it wasn't even close to Lucy. So, something in my head is screaming, "Get the kid." As I'm talking to the girl, this guy is sort of looking around, not like, "Oh, it's a beautiful day, look at the scenery." More like the look you do when you forget where you parked your car, but shiftier. He looks as if he's gonna run any second. Shit's getting real right here. I'm thinking on my feet, so I wait till he's doing his little scenery scan and just go, "Oh, look, she wants a cuddle," and grab her right out of his arms. I've got her sitting on my hip now, and I'm clinging onto her for dear life. He realizes what's happening and just turns and slowly walks away. Like, if you are her uncle, you'd be fighting and screaming to get the kid back. But he just disappears. My heart is pumping like mad, and this girl is just sitting there, obviously oblivious to the danger she was in. After standing there for a minute or two, regaining my composure, I start circling the park, thinking someone will recognize her. As I'm walking, I'm talking to her, saying, "Sweetie, where's your daddy? Is he here? Where's Daddy? Then this fairly old lady, maybe 65, comes over, queuing over her, and the girl outstretches her arms, so it's pretty clear she knows this old biddy. Oh, is she your daughter? Oh gosh, no, this is my granddaughter. I hand her over and I'm like, by the way, what's her name? Thankfully, this woman says, her name's Ava. I'm breathing a sigh of relief by this point. I say something along the lines of, there was a guy with her over there saying he's our uncle. He's left now. Before turning and walking away. I have no idea what this lady was thinking when she heard that. Number 2. I grew up in a small town with 1 store, 3 bars, and 4 or 5 parks, depending on how loosely you define park. My brother, sister, and I would ride our bikes down to the community centre playground about a half mile from our house, where we would spend most of our summer. Days where we had nothing else to do, we would ride down to the park in the afternoon, hike the surrounding woods for a while, then wait around on the playground for other kids to show up. We'd go home for dinner, and if there was still nothing going on, we'd ride back to the playground for the last few hours of daylight. I was maybe 14. It was one of our last nights of summer break, so my little sister and I were avoiding going back home. It was dark out at this point, but the park had lights throughout the gravel path leading up the playground and around the community centre itself. My sister was only 8 or 9, so she was already nervous just being outside in the dark, but she was with her older brother. We were both sitting on the swings when we heard noises in the woods, whooping and screeching. Obviously human, but just meaningless sounds. My sister immediately wanted to go home. I told her to wait a minute and called out, asking if they, whoever it was out there, were okay. More noises. "Come on, let's go," she said again. "Jessica, something's going on." I don't remember the exact conversation, but I remember saying that. Then I noticed someone standing under one of the lights in the community centre parking lot. They were wearing a baseball cap, throwing their face into the shadow, but it was clear that they were staring at us. I called out again. "Hey, are you okay?" He played with the zipper on his jacket, but didn't say anything. "Alright Jess, get ready to go now." We stood up from the swings, and just as a group of people, 6 or 7 older teenagers, came running out of the woods towards us, some making animal sounds, a few just laughing hysterically. Fortunately, the distance between the woods and the playground was enough that we were able to make it to our bikes before they could catch up to us. They chased us up the gravel path, only stopping at the edge of the park and playground. Later that month, a kid, a few years older than me, was beaten with a baseball bat at the same park. I don't know if it was the same people, but I learned my lesson. Trust your little sister. Number 3. So here's a bit of a backstory first. I live in a neighbourhood with lots of abandoned houses. There's about 12 houses in my neighbourhood and over 7 of them are abandoned. In one of the abandoned houses, there is a playground in the backyard that the old neighbours left behind. Now, I was 12 at the time and I knew in my brain that I was a little too old to be playing on a playground made for 6-year-olds, but I just couldn't resist a nice swing set. I would spend some of my extra time over there, as it was summer and I usually just played video games. The house is past some woods you have to walk through about a block away from my house. It was a normal day, and my mother said that I should go and get some fresh air outside and that she was tired of watching me play video games. I thought it was the perfect opportunity to go swing on the swing set. It was beautiful outside, the not too hot heat but warm with a slight wind. Perfect conditions. I put on my shoes and walked down to the forest. As I was about maybe a few steps in, I heard a branch snap. Now, I hear these all the time from squirrels, so I didn't think anything of it. I finally finished walking through the forest and reached the house. I open the back fence, lock it, and start to swing. I was having fun for about 2 minutes when I hear breathing. Now, I stop for a moment, trying to think where the hell it's coming from. After about 30 seconds of stopping, I forced myself to think it was just me as I was going pretty high. I continued to swing for another 5 minutes and decide that I was done for now. As soon as I sit up, I hear,
Hey!
I look around for a moment and notice a man, about mid-30s, early 40s, dirty gross black hair that is all over the place, a stained up sweatshirt and underwear with the back cut out so I can see the outline of his butt. This guy was obviously homeless and had a crazy look in his eyes. Here I am, a 5'2", 95-pound kid with no strength, staring at a 6'2", 170-pound man. As tough as I could, I said, "What's up?" The guy stared at me and started to smile. After a long 15 seconds, which seemed like 40 minutes, he said,
Have room for one more?
I quickly said, "I was actually leaving, but it's all yours." The man opened the gate, walked past me, sat down, and started to swing. I then speed walked to the gate, shut it, and start walking in the forest. About 20 seconds later, I heard a loud,
Get the fuck back here now!
And heard the gate spin open and running not far behind me. I practically shit my pants and start running as fast as I could. I somehow made it back to my house and locked the door without the man noticing where I went. I told my mum practically in tears and she called the police. The police searched around and came back a couple of hours later with no one. That night, I was tossing and turning in my bed when I heard footsteps in my street. I look out of my window to see the man looking through the windows of all the houses on my street. I start to shake as I grab the phone and call the police without even telling my parents. The cops then showed up a few minutes later and caught the man. The cops didn't give us a whole lot of information, but a few days later, cops called and told us the man has a mental illness and has been living in one of the abandoned houses for a couple of weeks and that he was planning on kidnapping me and doing God knows what to me. Number 4. When I was about 5 or 6 years old, my sister and her family friend's 2 sons were in a summer soccer league at a place called Summer Sport. My friend Julia and I would always play on the playgrounds while our parents watched the others' soccer game. It was a very friendly and safe place to play and to run off down the park a bit without worrying about anyone taking us. Never came across anyone suspicious as well. It was just a bunch of parents and grandparents watching their kids play, and tons of other kids playing on the playgrounds. One evening, my friend and I were playing when both of us suddenly had to use the bathroom, so we walk in the stall and realize that there is no toilet paper. Being the big girls we thought we were, we walked up to the concession stand where this old man and a few others had worked at for years. The old man was tall, lanky, and wore creepy Harry Potter type glasses. We told him the bathroom was out of toilet paper and that we needed some because we needed to go. I can still remember what the old man said.
You girls run onto the bathroom and go. I'll bring you the toilet paper.
We were about to run back to the bathroom when my friend said, "Let's tell them what we did," being proud that we were brave enough to ask for toilet paper. So, when we approached our parents, I shook my mum's shirt and said something along the lines of, "Mummy, the bathroom was out of toilet paper and we asked the old man for some and he said he's going to come and bring it to us and that we should go ahead and go to the potty." I remember all of them exchanging the disturbed looks, and my dad and her dad said for us to stay there and not go near the bathroom. They walked over to the restroom area and they first called out to see if anyone was in there, and no women responded, so they walked in and saw him waiting in the biggest stall without toilet paper. I don't know what happened to the man, but I never saw him there again. Update: I asked my dad what happened, and he said that when he and my friend's dad found him, they yanked him out of the stall and literally carried him by his arms to the office, which was above the concession stand. The man was fired and they did call the police, but he says he doesn't know what happened to the guy after they took him away in the cop car. He's not sure if he was charged or anything like that. He just knows that after 18 years, he's never heard of or seen the guy again.
Number 5.
Most of the time, we don't really remember things until we're about 4 to 5 years old. The same thing applied to me. Both of my parents worked, so I spent most of my time with my grandma. The town wasn't necessarily horrible, but it wasn't great at the same time. It didn't promise much safety, but it was still safe at the same time. Paradox, right? I was a pretty rambunctious kid, so I spent most of my time outside. My grandparents' front yard was the biggest part of the land, so it was practically my own playground. Since I played outside every day and every hour, anyone was able to see me. Then began the red Ford. I always saw it pass the house out of the corner of my eye, but never paid mind to it because as a kid I could care less. The truck would pass about every 5 minutes and slow down as it got to the front of the house. I constantly felt like I was being watched, and in reality, I was. The first time the truck actually stopped, I heard a high-pitched whistle that caught my attention. When I looked over, I saw a man leaning over the passenger seat and looking intensely at me. The weird part about this is that I have absolutely no recollection of what he looked like. Whenever I try to think about what he looks like, all that I can see is just a dark figure, basically an outline of him. Maybe I just suppressed it.
Come here.
Since I was a pretty friendly 5-year-old, my mind didn't see any red flags, so I walked up like the eager child I was and stood in front of the gate that stood as a barrier between us.
I have a cat back at my house down the block. Do you want to see her?
Before you say anything, I was taught the concept of stranger danger, but my mind just never absorbed it. In my mind, if someone looked or sounded friendly, they were no danger to me. Excited out of my mind, I hopped the fence without a second thought, while this guy opened the passenger door for me. I got in and settled in my seat, squirming around as I waited to see the cat. My impulsivity got the best of me, and I could feel the consequence of it now. That eagerness began to slowly dissipate away as this sinking feeling in my stomach replaced it. While we drove off, I tried my best to look away from him, focusing on all the details outside the window. Even though I couldn't see what he was doing, I just knew that he was staring at me. I could feel his eyes scouring my body, leaving my heart racing as I felt violated by the touch of his gaze. At this point, my eyes were clenched tight as if I was trying to imagine being somewhere else. I think it was then that the idea of stranger danger really set with me. Typing this part out is sending intense chills down my spine, because while my eyes were closed, I felt his touch. He caressed his hand along my thigh, as if I was a precious cloth, and my heightened sense of hearing shivered my body to the core, because I could hear his heavy, shallow breathing as if he were excited. Then I could feel a change in the atmosphere. I opened up my eyes for once and looked up to find him panicking while looking behind him.
Shit,
he muttered under his breath. The car began to pull over, and I could tell that every muscle in his body was tense. He looked as though he was racking his brain, trying to think of some sort of an idea. He placed his hand on my shoulder, and there was a burning sensation replacing the feeling of his touch.
Alright, Maya. Just remember you're my niece, okay?
My brain didn't really catch on to what he was saying while I stared at him in confusion, but I was oblivious to what he was doing and just soaked in this panicked environment.
A man walked up beside the driver's window, dressed up in a police officer's outfit. He looked at the man, and then at me, and smiled as he asked, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Sweating like a madman, he squirmed in his seat and stayed silent. The cop then took a good look at me and smiled as he said, "Hey, sweetheart, I need you to get out of the car." He walked over to the passenger side where I was sitting and reached in from the open window and pulled me out. I remember this huge sense of relief spreading around me, not just in my heart or stomach, but as if this immense heat that was surrounding me had been blown away. I held on to this savior of mine tightly and listened while he argued with my kidnapper.
What the fuck do you think you're doing?
He yelled at the cop. The cop looked back at him with a hint of anger that he was trying to suppress and said, "You're not Sly Slick. I saw you trick this little girl into going into your truck. I saw her enter your car and then I saw you drive away. Now I'm going to bring her back home and my partner is going to cuff you up and make you regret ever thinking about kidnapping this girl." It was practically like a movie as this officer carried me back home. My grandma and parents were told what happened. There were tears at what could have been. There was a bit of anger that I hadn't learned the concept of stranger danger, but overall, I'm so glad that cop had seen everything and stopped this guy before he could do anything.
Number 6. When me and my best friend were younger, we would ask our babysitter to take us to the school playground at night so we could play hide and seek. We lived in a small town where everyone knew everyone and were friendly with one another, so this wasn't abnormal or dangerous. At least, not at the time. One night, we went over and it was past our bedtimes, but our parents were cool and let us stay up late to play hide and seek. At one point, I was the one trying to find my friend and babysitter. As I looked for them, a car drove slowly by the playground. Their lights were off and the windows were tinted. I watched them as they drove by and I felt as though they were watching me. When they were out of sight, I instantly forgot about it and went back to seeking. It came to be around midnight and our babysitter thought that it was time to go home. Of course, we begged to stay a little longer, but he said that it was late. We started to walk up the hill that was behind the school. We then all heard a car behind us, and we looked over to see the same car driving on the grass towards us. My babysitter instantly grabbed us both and threw us over his shoulders and started running towards the bushes that cut us off from the other street. The car started to speed up and so did my babysitter. When we got into the bushes, my babysitter forced us through the rose bushes and up the metal fence. I ended up getting cuts everywhere. But worst of all, I cut my leg on the fence and it was bleeding badly. I could hear the driver of the car calling out to us, asking in a kind voice where we were, and then in a serious and scary voice saying he knew we were in there. We ended up getting to a house that had lights on and our babysitter banged on the door, begging to let us in and that he had kids and one was bleeding really badly. The woman, who we knew as Emily, opened the door and pretty much dragged us in and shut the door behind her and locked it. Later that night, the police were called and I was sent to the hospital to get stitches and a shot for the rusty metal that had cut my leg. It doesn't end there though. Later that week, my dad was watching the news as usual, and a new story came up. It showed the playground that we were at a couple of nights ago, and showed medics rolling a body covered with a white sheet into the ambulance. The body belonged to a girl who had been dead for a couple of days, and her body hadn't even been there for very long. The killer was never found, so he could still be lurking in our streets. Sometimes, I wonder if the man in the car did get us. Would we have been in the same situation that the girl had ended up in, and would have been watching the news to see our bodies being rolled into the ambulance? It makes me feel guilty in a weird way, but I will never and have never stepped another foot into that playground since.
Number 7.
This happened about 9 years ago, when I was in middle school. I had totally forgotten about it till my friend brought it up yesterday. In 7th grade, my best friend and I would walk down to her family's restaurant after school. Between the school and restaurant, there was a public park with a playground. Only kids from the school would hang out there. Sometimes, when the weather was nice, we would hang out at the park. If we were there for more than an hour, usually her uncle would come and check on us. We did this for most of the school year. Around March, a strange man started showing up around the park, trying to talk to girls, asking them about the school or things they liked to do. He did this for a couple of weeks, then disappeared. We never really thought much of it. Then, one day, it was just my friend and I at the park, and he shows up. He starts talking to my friend, trying to get her to come with him. She keeps telling him no. He then grabs her arm and tries to pull her along. We both scream for him to let her go. Luckily, her uncle was on the way to check on us anyway, and he heard our screams. We can see him running towards us. He then tackles the man and tells us to run to the restaurant. We go and tell her mum what happened. Her mum calls the cops, but the guy got away from her uncle. The cops never found him and told us if anything suspicious ever happens again, to call them.
Hey guys, it's the Grim Reader here. I hope you enjoyed listening through that. If you did, please slap a like, and if you haven't already, why not subscribe to be notified of future uploads? If you have a story you want me to narrate, please send it to my email in the description box. Once again, thanks a lot for listening.